Welcome to Table Talk, where we take a look at a board gaming issue, not an issue, just a topic of conversation, and I share my initial thoughts, and then hopefully you share yours as well in the comments down below, so I can make a follow-up Table Talk back video, and that way, to quote a phrase that is entirely my own, we all participate in the conversation. This is a series that's inspired by Rodney Smith of Watch It Played, who's recently kicked it back off again. I saw another episode of his recently, and it made me think that I hadn't done one for a while as well. And we'd been talking a little bit on the Discord, and somebody put it forward to do a Table Talk style video on the idea of table space. So that's what we're going to talk about today, table space, and more so the effect that Table Hogs, large table presence games can have upon your game nights, and also the effect that box size and storage and efficient storage can have in terms of amplifying your gaming experience, and the pros and cons of both. And I think this is a really interesting thing to talk about, kind of twofold. Let me get that out of the way. We don't need that. We can see more of a plant, so we know that I'm easy and I'm breezy and we're just relaxed, chilling in this clear murder den behind me. Oh, luckily we have foliage, which coincidentally is the safe word. But I've been thinking a lot about table space recently and the effects that it has upon game nights, especially because we have been doing some, not renovations, but let's just say my girlfriend has been involved in numerous projects that have taken up a lot of space in our home. And we have a table. Our home is small. And so I know right off the bat, I will never have the luxury of owning a board game table. I won't. As to where I live in Toronto right now, there just isn't the space for it if we want to have the room be used for anything other than board gaming, which you might say, well, why would you do that? And honestly, you're making a very valid point. However, I am mindful of, my girlfriend's experience of living in this place as well. And so because of that, we have a folding table, an IKEA Gatleg table, or IKEA Norden. It looks like this one up here. And it's great. It's really usable. I love that it folds down and it provides a nice space, provides about a good sort of rising sun, 3-fold board with some areas on the side and a little bit of space up and below the table, which is great. Sometimes I run out of room though, but for the most part, it's generally pretty good for a larger game. But I was thinking recently when I was looking on our shelf and we were saying, hey, let's play a game, and we didn't want to move some of the furniture to extend the table to its full length, I was contemplating about the idea of table presence and space in general. And I suppose if you have a designated game room, this probably isn't an issue for you, but I do have some other thoughts that I'm interested as well to put forward, because I've been finding myself gravitating towards games that I know have a lower footprint. And I think that's interesting in terms of talking about what games we add to our collections and talking about what games we realistically will pull out in an everyday setting. I think this idea can be applied to a lot of things. It can be applied to complexity as well, but I'm not going to go too far down that aspect of the conversation because I feel like that's a bit of a tangent. But who knows, the idea of playing less complex games because you have less time, or your time is limited, or your brain is limited and you've been working hard, or you're tired, or you have a lot of other things on the go, and not being able to devote the mental capacity to playing one of those longer epic games. And I feel there should be a similar parallel made with table space and with table presence. And is more table presence always a good thing? There's something wonderfully lovely about being able to take a game with you somewhere, to be able to pull it out in a park or at a bar or on an airplane or stuffed into the trunk of a car as you sneak into that drive-in movie theater. You're going to get bored. You might as well have a quick little button shy game that you can solo in the car, so that when the drive-in movie theater authorities pop open the trunk, at least you're having a good time. And so I am finding, definitely, especially in the last couple weeks or so, myself gravitating towards games that have that lower table presence and that don't get so excessive and have so many components and so many bits and so many things to set up on the table to enjoy, just to start enjoying the game and to start engaging in the hobby. In a sense, I guess the question is, does a larger table presence ever detract from getting games to the table? Is it always a good thing? We just had the Unaffordable Games Deathmatch that happened, and we were talking a little bit about Foundations of Rome and how the added plastic helps get people interested and get people involved and get people wanting to play the game. But I also think the opposite might be true, in a sense of getting people to be a bit intimidated by all the bits and components. And perhaps Foundations of Rome is a poor example because they're all fairly contained in your own tray. You pass out a tray, you say, don't worry, you put some stuff on the board, you'll be fine. But I think there is some sort of merit to that idea, or I don't know. On the other hand, as I always try to look at both sides of things and devil advocate myself, and that way hopefully spark some comment or discussion, there is a certain level of epic nature that taking up a whole table can bring. And is that the optimal way to enjoy the hobby? I mean, of course, that's a weird leading question. The answer is no. There is no optimal way to enjoy the hobby. We all have different tastes and sizes and opinions and whatever. And so maybe that's all this conversation boils down to. It's, hey, do what you want, do what you got with your space. But I think there's a real trend in the deluxification aspect of the hobby to make things bigger and bigger. And I don't necessarily know if, in that case, bigger means better. In fact, I would certainly take the stance that bigger doesn't mean better. Bigger just means bigger. Because I've been noticing too, when playing these larger scale games, the more bits and the more components and the more tokens and the more sprawl that happens on the table and the more times you have to survey the table and say, oh yeah, get me that thing over there, that adds to a little bit of labor. Right? We're playing a game here. It's not going to be laborious in any sort of sense, but yes, it will in some sort of sense that I'm going to talk about right now. There's a difference between finishing a game and being tired and being burnt and exhausted and saying, yeah, I did a lot of stuff. My back's a little achy from leaning over the table. And then there's the difference of finishing a game and feeling invigorated and refreshed and excited about the experience that you had. And that's not bogged down by the little minutia of constant reaching across the table or too much sprawl or excess, but because you had just a condensed, defined experience. And maybe that has nothing to do with table space. Maybe that just has to do with the flow of the game and the consideration of the game, the consideration of the components, and how many individual unique things you need to deal with, or how many individual unique things I'm interested in dealing with. Because with every character and with every enemy and everything that has a unique ability that you have to read and figure out, that often comes with additional labor and additional sprawl and additional stuff to put out and manage. But I don't know, I somehow feel like we might be going in the wrong direction because of deluxifications and because of the ever-expanding largeness of table presence than we should, or in a way that makes it more of a niche hobby, I suppose, than something for everyone. I'm thinking about all the large games in the Unaffordable Deathmatch tournament that we just had, the video that went out on Wednesday. This video is kind of in response to that as well, just thinking about the massive amount of space that some of these things take for not doing a whole lot, or just for excess. Frostpunk, you have the big tower in the middle. Return to Dark Tower, you have that big tower in the middle of the board that is there for the fun of it. It's there for the grandeur of it. But for every bit of that grandeur, that requires you to set it up, and that requires you to take the time to really set it up, to experience that grandeur, to really feel like you built something huge. And that's also why I'm so interested in inserts and setup and tear down and flow of that aspect of it, because I just like playing. I don't like the other stuff, or the other stuff doesn't bring me as much joy as playing the game does, right? And so the same, I think, can be applied to box size on another level. Dwellings of Eldervale, which, yeah, I'll go get it, is this big and this thick Well, I mean, I have the base version, so actually half of this box, and I've commented about this a few times on the channel, half of this box is filled with nothing. It's really filled with nothing because it was meant for the deluxe pledge, and they just all did it in the same box, and whatever. But if you take something like this versus the Red Cathedral, which is a sort of smaller, very smaller box, everything is packed in so well. It is one of the only games that doesn't have room for its expansion in the box. And honestly, I love that about it because the base game is also just really good on its own. To me, these two games give me about the same mental experience, the same level of decision making. But because of that, because there's kind of comparable in their level of decision making, and that's kind of a lighter 90-minute game. This says half an hour per player, I think, on the box. This one says 80 minutes, which is pretty bang on. So that hour 20 area, if you're playing a 2-player game or 2 to 3-player game, for me, I don't see a reason, and this is probably one of the reasons why I'll be getting rid of Dwellings of Eldervale at some point soon. I don't see a reason why I would go through the extra effort to open the table up, to pull out the table even more, to pull out all the components and all the stuff in this box when I could get the same experience with a smaller footprint and honestly more relaxing because there's less stuff to fiddle with and juggle around and have less mess out on the side of the table and less mess out boxes scattered around the room because it's all contained. And so this is one of those examples where the smaller table presence just serves me and my personal life so well. And I think really detracts from certain experiences. I mean, it also helps that the Red Cathedral is just like a really good game. And I think Dwellings is kind of just a good game. But I think I only feel that way because of the potential labor that is involved and also the lack of mess around me that happens when I'm playing with Red Cathedral. You just have your stuff in front of you. It doesn't take up too much room, and you can just focus on the core game, and you don't have to worry about pulling a big box lid and loading everything in at the end of the game night. It's just quick, easy, done, moving on to the next thing that you're going to play, or cleaning up efficiently. I don't know. And perhaps that's only me. Perhaps it's because I have this smaller space, and those sorts of things are a consideration. I'm curious to those of you who have like designated game rooms with tables out there, if you find the same hassle of boxes and larger boxes on the side, or if that's even an issue. Do you find that table space and table presence enhances the game to such a degree that it's worth the extra effort in the setup? Do you find you need that grander table presence because you have a board gaming table, because you have that depth in the table that you're leaning into, and you need to fill it up with something to make that space feel worthwhile? That also could be a legitimate thing, or a reason why you would want that ever expansive, large, excessive game versus something that can be pulled out easily and set up easily and is focused and determined and efficient in its components and in its consideration of space, both in a box size and how it splays out across the board. We talk about games that are table hogs. I know Dinosaur Island is one of the biggest culprits. I've seen the player aids, and that's why I like Dinosaur Island Run Right, because it's a small, simple, easy version. But do the table hogs enhance the play? Do larger components enhance the play? I know particularly my girlfriend doesn't like Blood Rage because the cards are too small for her. She's like, I can't read these. And so maybe is that another consideration of making a more expansive game? Or does that added space just increase the distance from us and make it harder to connect with the people who we're playing with? I don't know. Those are my initial thoughts. Those are my musings. We'll do a follow-up Table Talk back video in this. I'm interested to see what you all have to say on the matter. The direction of games and where we're going with things and how much larger and larger and how much is too much. I'm interested to hear your thoughts on it all. And sometimes it's just nice to chat, talk about conversations, think about it in a bit of a philosophical way. And yeah, be sure to leave your comments down below, and I will absolutely take them, quote them, assemble them, and curate them for the next video. It's been a long time since I did one of these table talk backs and table talks, and sometimes it's just nice to sit and chat about fun things in our hobby. In any case, thank you for being here. I like doing these sorts of things. I like hanging out with you all. I think we have such a lovely community, and big or small, I wouldn't want to be anywhere else. My name's Chris George, and oh no, this is really embarrassing. I thought I had a catchphrase, and I don't have a catchphrase. Wait a minute. This is Table Talk. You're the ones who got to come up with it anyway. You figure that out, and I'll see you in the response.